Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Dr. Shealy, are you blessed?
As much as you are, but I'm blessed.
I was just thinking about Edward Snowden. He's the former CIA employee, and he allegedly leaked some classified information from the National Security Agency without prior authorization, and and he disclosed some global surveillance programs to we the villagers, and we heard of these things and we talked about these things, but he said, yeah, no, they're real. They're real. And so he became hunted by the United States government for what he did. And some people say he committed crimes. Well, I think he's a national hero. And
I agree.
Yeah. Well, there's another guy who may end up being a national hero as well. And this guy is an alleged pervert.
You mean Weiner himself?
Yeah, him. Yeah, Weiner. Anthony Weiner married to Huma Aberdeen, and she is Hillary's closest confidant. And so Anthony Weiner has been allegedly exposing himself to young people, and I guess anybody who would pay attention.
Right.
I'm
not sure he cares whether it's young, old, male, or female.
Right. Well, and I don't know. But what I'm saying is he may be a national hero as well, because his escapades seem to have had an impact negatively on the Clinton campaign for the presidency of the United States. Now, if his antics end up undoing her taking that seat in the Oval Office, I think he just might be considered a national hero as well, even though
I'd recommend him for Secretary of State.
So I was just thinking about that, and it's interesting how at the last minute this dirt is having such an impact, and we knew this for years. So I guess maybe it's time that I share with our broadcast class a little bit of what happened to me in regards to Anthony Weiner.
Oh, my heavens, I didn't know you were interested.
Well, I was interested in making sure he got all the fame, notoriety that he deserved. And in that light, I would find articles on the internet, and I would share them at a website, our website. And all of a sudden, I got these nasty grams threatening me by lawyers. So lawyers were threatening me, and so naturally I did what I always do, and that's ramp up. When a lawyer threatens me, I just increase whatever it is I'm doing that they don't like. So I did that, and the nasty grams have stopped so far. But, they've threatened to sue us and so forth. But here's the point. The point is that I believe that's tied to the Hillary campaign. Because who cares about Anthony Weiner, except for the fact that he's tied to his wife and who's tied to Hillary Clinton. So the Clinton machine, I believe, is doing everything it can to silence any negativity that they have caused. And we're not causing the negativity. We're just making sure that that they get all the credit they deserve by sharing it on the internet. So we didn't cause it; they did. So
I'm
I just want
totally with you. I think it's wonderful. I mean, it's just such a small part of the whole evil empire of the Clintons but it needs to be talked about, voted against, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah. And, it'll be a happy day in America for those with brains when they find out that if we find out that Hillary has not been selected to further destroy the United States of America. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Well, I pray that she goes down. I'd like it to be a landslide in the other direction to prove just how bad she is. But I would settle for one vote.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Dr. Shealy, we're getting calls from all over the country.
I don't doubt
people,
it.
Well,
the people who listen to us are in general attuned to the same thought.
Well, yes, and the calls are in sync with our way of thinking, and people are very concerned. I'm talking about people who listen to us on the radio, students, instructors, people, even people I meet on the street, if you will, are very, very concerned. And no one, I haven't met a single person yet in the last several months who thinks that everything is going just splendidly. People are afraid. They're afraid of collapse. They're afraid of absence of health care, doctors, and so forth. Everything you can think about that they enjoy in their lives, they're worried about losing that.
Well, if she is elected, I honestly cannot see how we can avoid a civil war.
Yeah,
I mean, a true war.
And many people whom I chat with, I don't go, hey, let's have a civil war. I mean, I'm not doing that. Or let's have a revolution. I'm not doing that. But people are saying to me, I think this is going to happen. They're suggesting that it's a real, serious, distinct possibility that we will go that way because of the kinds of corruption that we see. And how is it possible that a serious candidate such as Hillary Clinton, when I say serious, I don't mean that, I mean that she is a contender for the presidency.
Elected by the leftistas to this position.
Right,
to run.
Right, and you have to wonder, her friends are people like Barney Frank, who's a pervert in his own ways. We've got Anthony Weiner. I mean, how can somebody be associated?
And who is a greater pervert than Bill Clinton?
Well, yeah, there you go.
I mean, come on. Weiner is a small fry compared to Bill Clinton.
Right, and allegedly there's this young man who claims that he is the son of William Jefferson Blythe Clinton, and he wants a small piece of Monica Lewinsky's blue dress to prove to prove unequivocally
he's as off as his father.
He wants to prove that genetically that Bill Clinton is in fact his father. And now it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that we are in this state of affairs in the United States, that we would even consider someone like in the Clinton family again after all the scandals. And how is it possible that Hillary could not be tainted by the antics of Bill? How would that be possible? It's not possible.
No way.
So, Dr. Shealy, do you have an event tonight in Springfield?
I do. I'm going to teach people how to use their own brain to control pain that, not for some immediate urgency that needs medical care, but for the aftermath of continuing pain. You bet. Interestingly, somebody from our show from Alton, Illinois, sent me a note. They're driving over for it.
Isn't that great? Isn't that great? we have students who call the house and they say, "Hey, listen, I'm going to be in Missouri. I'd love to come and visit you." And it's really nice. It's nice when people are actually paying attention and they think that maybe we're worth spending some time with because they can learn from some of the things that we say, do, and show. And I think that's wonderful. So that's great. So that's tonight. Is that 6 o'clock to 7 p.m.?
6 o'clock at the Doubletree on Kearney and Glenstone.
Yep, in Springfield, Missouri. Absolutely free. And you'll be in a theater. Dr. Shealy and I have broadcasted there together, along with Dan Swindell, and we broadcasted live on KWTO one afternoon, and it was really fun. And it's a small theater. It holds about 100 people, and it's very, very comfortable. It's like going to a movie theater, and I think you'll love it. So if you get a chance, that's tonight. Tonight, 6 to 7 p.m. at the Doubletree in Springfield, Missouri, and that's November 2nd. November 2nd, tonight. Okay, Dr. Shealy, I had an experience I'd like to share with you. I was traveling about 1,100 miles to go to. I decided to go to my high school reunion, 45th high school reunion, and I didn't make it, but I got close. I got within an hour and a half of there, and then we had a massive hydraulic leak in our car, and I ended up spending 2 days at a rest stop in Maryland, and it's called Maryland House. And Maryland House just went over, I believe, it's a $30 million renovation at Maryland House, and it's a huge complex. And the point I'd like to discuss with you is two things. One, Maryland House has done away with urinals that flush with water. Now, to describe this, and I don't want to be too graphic, class, but I'd like to describe this for medical purposes and health purposes. The urinals along the wall are similar in design to a 5-gallon bucket, and they taper off to an air trap, if you will, or a gas seal, if you will, which is filled with some clear liquid that is lighter than urine. So when you use this urinal, the urine goes down the side of this porcelain, we'll call it a bucket, but it's a urinal, and there's no water used at all, no water anywhere involved in the flushing of this. And as a matter of fact, you cannot flush this. And I'd like to ask Dr. Shealy, what about disease potential in this kind of an environment when we come back? Class, Dr. Norman Shealy's with us, and if you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. And if you'd like to listen as you travel, 605-477-3249, 605-477-3249. By the way, Dr. Shealy, a lot of broadcasters on alternative media use Skype. We don't, unless I'm connecting to another network. If I connect to Republic Broadcasting and am a guest there, I might connect via Skype. And I sometimes communicate with those overseas via Skype. Well, so now I got a message first time, and it says, sorry, we could not connect to Skype. Please check your internet connection and try again. And then there's a retry button. Well, it's not me. Skype has done something, and I just did a little bit of research, and it's not me, and there's a fix, and I have to figure out what that is. I don't have time while I'm on the air to do that, but I just wanted to share with our class that I have a feeling that this has something to do with the alternative media and those who use Skype to get the word out. Maybe it has something to do with Hillary and her campaign, because I don't know many who would be in the alternative media area realm who would be in her camp. So this may be just one more way of silencing those of us who don't approve of her husband, her family, her foundation, or
Her
their
life.
ilk. So, right. So I just wanted to share that. So, Dr. Shealy, I was at this Maryland house, and it's in between like a wide strip of land between the north and southbound lanes of Interstate 95, and they have these urinals along the wall, and they look like the size of 5-gallon buckets. Now, there's some physical problems with this design. One is there's no water used at all in the flushing, because there's no flush handle, there's no flush button, there's no flush sensor. There's nothing that determines whether someone is using the urinal and automatically flushes for them, because maybe they can't remember to flush the urinal, the way we used to. But there's no water used at this thing at all. And it's the size of a 5-gallon bucket. Now, these, we farmers use these 5-gallon buckets for all kinds of things like hydraulic fluid, and maybe we buy 5 gallons of motor oil at a time. And so we use these buckets. And I'm trying to describe the size of this thing. And you can't get that close to it because it's not shaped for a man to walk up to this thing and get close, because it's like the size of a 5-gallon bucket. So naturally, gravity is ever present, and there's drop after drop, and actually it's more than a drop. It's like puddles of urine right below this urinal where, whoever's using it seems to miss. Well, I'm concerned about that, because you're pretty much going to be standing in urine and track that everywhere you go until it dries up.
You made me wanted to go outside already.
Well, I'm thinking, you're at this urinal and you look at this puddle and you say, well, you know what? I don't think I'm going to get too close. So I'm going to do a long shot, maybe from 2 feet away. And that
with a few dribbles in between.
Well, that might work, for part of the process. But, at the end of the process, there's going to be a trail from the urinal to right between where the guy's legs are or feet are. So it's not. This isn't going to work. Yeah. So, I don't want to be too graphic about this, but what I do want to do is underscore what a ridiculous design this is. So then they have, in order to compensate for this, they have a staff. Now, the only reason I know this, Dr. Shealy, is I had the good fortune of spending 2 days at this rest stop. So I got a chance to, go into the washroom and shave at the sink, and I got a chance to see a lot of what happens there. And there's a full-time staff that has mops and maybe some kind of disinfectant. And they will literally close off one. There's 2 sides to this restroom. They'll literally close off one side and then maintain that. And that probably takes an hour or 2. And then they open up that side that they just cleaned, and they race over to the other side and mop that up, and then switch back and forth. So when we come back, can you talk about, are there any health hazards to this tracking urine all over, spraying, the floors? And then also, for those who use the stalls, when you hit one of those stall flush buttons that does use water. Class, Dr. Norman Shealy's with us. NormShealy.com, NormShealy.com. And that's where you can sign up for the same free newsletter that I get multiple times per week. So, Dr. Shealy, we're talking about public restrooms and this urinal that has no way of flushing it. And to clean it, some guy has to walk around with some kind of a device, either to spray it with some disinfectant. I'm talking about the entire urinal, the top, bottom, left, right, inside, outside, everything, and go from urinal to urinal to urinal, then clean up the urine on the floor, and repeat the process, throughout his whole shift. And then, so do you think that there is an increased risk of transmitting disease by standing in urine using this type of a urinal, or is it?
Yeah, no question about it. Any way you look at it, if you get urine on the soles of your feet, or shoes, it's going to come up on your shoes to some extent, and you have to put your shoes on, and you can't put your shoes on without touching them. Right,
and shoelaces sometimes drag, on the sides of the shoe. So then you get.
I consider that a public hazard.
Well, the government of Maryland, it's maryland.gov, their website has this Maryland House. So, class, if you want to look at it. Now, I'm not so sure that they feature images of these urinals on their website, but they do talk about, proactive ecology. They do talk about that. And
actually, this
Dr.
sounds to me
Shealy,
as if it uses a lot more than the water to flush a urinal. I mean, if they've got to clean the floor several times a day, probably minimum, it's hardly what you could call green.
Oh, no, I'm thinking hourly, Dr. Shealy. I think they clean it about
that's
literally
got to be 10 times more expensive than having water flush the urinal.
And so here's the next question. This would be asking you for medical advice, if you will, for using a public commode. Now, when someone flushes one of those commodes, typically, if it's not one that automatically detects that it should be flushed, if it has one of those flush handles that some people might press them with their hand. I wouldn't even think about that.
Well, I try to lift my foot up to press those.
Yeah. Now, when you do that, that means it's pretty hard to not face that commode. And those things have a high-pressure water jet that swirls that water around and cleans that commode. And I'm sure there are there's a mist of whatever was in the toilet that becomes airborne and hits you, sprays a person. You just don't see it. I think that's what happens. Is there a concern with using public restrooms, Dr. Shealy?
Oh, yes. I have to say that I have to be in serious dire to consider using one.
Okay. All right. So, class, and maybe here is the answer, or partial answer. Make sure that you are ready to get out of there when you hit that flush handle, and try not to face. Really,
have the door open and be ready to sprint.
Yeah. And so, what do you use to open that door? I would suggest you use a fresh piece of toilet paper on your hand, because think about all of those surfaces that have been touched by the people who just used that facility before you. Now, I don't know anyone who has washed his hands or her hands inside inside that commode area. You can't. There's no water to wash your hands. I mean,
right.
Unless you...
I consider the whole public restroom repulsive.
Okay. So, class, keep that in mind as you travel. And Dr. Shealy, what I've decided to do is travel less frequently. I mean,
take a jog.
Well, seriously, I've decided that I really don't want to travel as much as I have, and I really don't want to eat at restaurants very frequently anymore. I just want to go back under my rock here. Mrs. Finelli said that no one used to know who we were, and we were, we just weren't known. And I sometimes I really want to go back under that rock where we weren't known. I want to stay home, Dr. Shealy. That's what I want to do. I want to stay home.
I agree. That's just one of the many, many problems of travel.
Mm-hmm. Now, you had mentioned pain. You're going to teach how to cope with pain in your seminar tonight at the Doubletree Hotel in Springfield, Missouri, 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Plenty of time for questions and meeting Dr. Shealy personally. I suggest that if you have that opportunity, if you're in the area, or if you can make the trip, I suggest you consider doing that. It will probably be one of life's memorable events, going to that event and meeting Dr. Shealy. And I'm saying that with all sincerity. I remember you talking about this several times on the air, Dr. Shealy, managing pain and putting yourself in a place mentally where you can deal with pain. And I remember not too long ago being in the dentist chair. And I really love my dentist. His name is Dr. Howard Shane. He's a USA Preparedness instructor. Those of you who have been to the the Get Prepared Expos and gone to his seminar, you know who he is. He's the dentist who will say, you know, in the front of a seminar, he'll say to his new patients, "Okay, this is not going to hurt me." And so I was in the chair, and the chair was reclined, and I'm hanging on for dear life, you know. And I remember what you said. And so I mentally put myself in another place. And everything was so much better. And it works. Is that what you're going to be teaching tonight?
Yes, that kind of thing. There's several of these mental imagery things that one can do to detach from what's going on around you, and we'll play with those. I don't mean that in a facetious way. I think exploring this should be fun, not work.
And, you know, I don't know anyone who really looks forward to being in the dental chair, really. Even if you have a wonderful friend who is your dentist, and even if you have the, you know, an extremely competent dentist, it's still open wide, and then you hear the sound of the drill, and you get the Novocaine, and you know it's not all that pleasant. But literally, I can tell you that I put myself in another place, and it was fine, and before I knew it, it was over. So it was great. It was great, and so that's. I think if you can, class, please try to meet up with Dr. Shealy and learn how to do this. So, Dr. Shealy, when I was, and by the way, there's no charge for tonight's adventure. Seriously, learning adventure. It's an educational adventure. And if you start your own business and you consider this an educational adventure, the travel at around 56 cents a mile to there, from there, and if you grab a bite to eat, all of that is tax deductible if this is an educational part of your business. So consider that, please. Dr. Shealy, when I was stranded at Maryland House, and I noticed in the restroom they didn't have a fan. I mean, they didn't have a window, so they had a fan blowing air around, just circulating it around. And I noticed that the fan was colored white, but the blades of the fan and the grill of the fan had this black dust stuck on the surfaces, the cage, and the fan blades. The reason I'm mentioning this is I believe that that black dust is the air that is in the area where all of this traffic is. The diesels going up and down the highway, the diesels refueling at this rest stop that had fuel stations, and the brake linings that become airborne as we use our automotive and truck brakes. So I think that's what these black particles are attached to the fan blades and the fan housing. And that brings me to the next point, and I want to tie all this together if I can. And I was at a person's house, and I remember they had a fan on their in their house, and it had the same black dust. And this was not right next to this Maryland house, but it was in a congested area in terms of population. So the question is, Dr. Shealy, do you think that this black dust, which is airborne, no question about it, and I'm sure it's under the refrigerator cooling coils of refrigerators of people who live in congested areas, do you think that this is maybe one of the reasons why we are having more respiratory problems, more cancers and so forth, these airborne particles?
Well, it's part of the whole, yes, no question about it. I mean, let's face it, the air contains all kinds of toxins, chemical poisons from 550,000 poisons that are released into the atmosphere every year, mold, it's not the cleanest thing in the world.
I was reading about, and I don't have it in front of me, I'm going by memory, but there is this new disease that doctors are studying. It's a respiratory disease, and I believe it's in Pennsylvania, and they're pointing to the air and the water causing this disease or this respiratory distress in a wealthy area of Pennsylvania. And they're saying that it's coming from the air and the water. Now, we've believed that for a long time, that you can get sick from drinking water that has bacteria and so forth in it, and you can get sick from air with bacteria in it. Is there a way that we can prevent getting sick from air and water, Dr. Shealy? Is there something that we can do to make sure that that next sip of water that we have while we travel isn't going to make us sick? Is there something that we can do?
That's a biggie.
Let's think about that and talk about it when we come back. Dr. Shealy's with us. Norm Shealy is with us, and we're talking about water and drinking water as you travel, and of course breathing air as you travel is not much of an option there. What can we do to protect ourselves, Dr. Shealy? Is there something that you do when you travel to make sure that you don't get Montezuma's revenge or some other malady? Okay, so we just lost Dr. Shealy, and we're going to get him right back. And so there's a story on thecollegefix.com, and it says, trending, universities work to purge male students of their, quote, toxic, unquote, masculinity. Universities across the nation are taking steps to actively purge male students of what has been labeled toxic masculinity. Examples abound of campuses hosting training sessions and groups and meetings and lectures and other programs to effectively cleanse what many campus leaders and left-leaning scholars contend is an unhealthy masculinity in young men today. And so where instances, we're talking about male... We're talking about male masculinity and how some institutions of higher learning are interested in purging male students of their toxic masculinity. Dr. Shealy, I mentioned this with Captain John Reagan yesterday, that there was a woman who was having difficulty putting air in her tires as I was traveling, and I stopped with Mrs. Finelli and I asked if she was having trouble or needed any assistance, and she said, yeah, she really could, because she used this air pump at a gas station to fill her tires, and what happened was she let the air out of their tires instead of increasing the air in the tires. So she had the exact opposite effect of what she was trying to accomplish. And so I was, it was wet out, and I was on the pavement, sitting down because I had to get enough pressure to get air in this tire, and a woman came out, was there. She was an employee of the gas station. She said, "A real man," and and I was absolutely, I was really surprised. I was in the dark, with this dim light overhead. Yeah. So yeah. So we're losing masculinity, and this woman, the employee, was kind of surprised to see, a male helping someone who needed help. So why is it, do you think, that we're trying to rid men of their masculinity? Do you have any ideas why we're doing this?
Because the left wing is neutered, if you will.
And they want everyone else to be. And they want everyone else to be.
Right.
Huh. Yeah.
I think they are among the most negative force on the face of the earth.
And, Dr. Shealy, as I was helping this, I'm guessing around 30 years old, this woman, my concern was that she might have thought that I was going to be a predator, but I made sure she knew my wife was in the car, and it was it was very surprising, her reaction to getting assistance from some passerby, if you will. So I think that we can still do that and help people in need. And then of course, there are those who want to take advantage of anyone who would be willing to help, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just being helpful, just being
I totally agree. I mean, to me, there's only one purpose in being here. That's to help other people, period.
Yeah.
And it should be almost any way that is comfortable for you to do so.
Dr. Shealy, we're going into the top of the hour break, and here are some of the things on my list. Can we regrow a tooth that has been cracked, for example, if both pieces are together? Another thing is loneliness and electronic gadgets. Are we substituting friendship and fellowship with electronic gadgets like cell phones? And then an egg a day, can it cut the risk of a stroke as being claimed? And physician-assisted suicide, it passed in Washington, D.C. And then age spots. Those are some of the things that I've got on my list. And, of course, we'll go to your list as well. Dr. Shealy's with us, Dr. Norm Shealy, normshealy.com. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, normshealy.com. Dr. Shealy, I read an article yesterday, and it was in the telegraph.co.uk, and the headline is, Smartphones and tablets in bedrooms disrupt sleep even when switched off. And the article goes on to say, smartphones and tablets in bedrooms disrupt the sleep of children even if they're switched off, a new study has shown. Researchers at King's College London and Cardiff University have reviewed 11 studies involving more than 125,000 children to find out if technology was impacting sleep. They found that using smartphones or tablets before bedtime doubles the risk of disrupted night sleep and raises the chances of feeling excessively sleepy the following day by twofold. Dr. Shealy, do you have a concern about using these devices just before bedtime as well?
I have concern of using them, period, let alone at bedtime.
Yeah.
I think that they're the most antisocial device ever invented.
I'm glad you said that, because I totally agree. And when I was at this Maryland house, I noticed a number of people eating, with their traveling companion, whether it be their spouse or whomever. They would sit down and use their cell phones to talk to somebody else,
right?
Across the table from their travel companion.
I can
thought that was quite.
Our kids and I would have had big battles if that had happened when our kids were growing up.
Well, we don't allow
their cell phone would have been thrown in the goose pond.
Yeah. And you're right. It is an antisocial device, and I've talked with young people many times about this. They'll text a person, and then they'll put their phone down, and then they'll look at it, and then look at it again, and waiting for that message, and then they'll pick up their phone and read the message that was the response from their friend, and then they'll put the phone down, and then they'll text their friend again, and this will go on for a while, texting back and forth. And when I see this kind of activity, I'll say, "Have you ever considered, just calling that person, and whatever it is you're talking about, you can hear the inflection, the intonation, you can determine what's going on, and you can resolve whatever it is. If you're trying to figure out what time you're going to meet, each other and where, it's really easy if you just pick up the phone and do that, because you can have a conversation. But young people do not like to use the telephone as we used to use the telephone, in my opinion. That's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing there is a distance that they're putting between them and their friends. them and their family with these devices by not communicating orally. And I don't like it. And I don't know what to do about it other than our children can't text us. It's impossible if they wanted to because we don't have cell phones.
Well, interestingly, a neurosurgeon sent out an interesting article within the last week, and he has demonstrated unequivocal brain damage with frequent use of cell phones in an animal study.
And are you saying that the radio frequencies that are being used, the radiated power from the cell phone's transmitter is causing that? Is that what this is about?
That's what it looks like.
Dr. Shealy, when I have spoken in seminars as I've done in the past, in many cities at the preparedness type events, I would talk about cell phones and the hidden dangers in these cell phones. And before I would talk about the dangers, I would say, how many in here have cell phones? And please raise your hand, and they'd raise their hand. And I'd say, all right, how many don't? And I put my hand up. And I would be the only one who did not have a cell phone. Then we would talk about the dangers, the cancers, the brain cancer, the breast cancer, and so forth. And we talk about the use of a microwave oven and how it uses the same frequency as a cell phone and so forth, and how you can cook a hot dog slowly in a microwave oven, or you can turn it to full power and cook it quickly. And you can cook yourself slowly with a cell phone, 1 to more than 1 watt of radiated power. And after we went through discussing this, I would say, how many of you are willing to dump your cell phone? Let me ask a different way. How many of you are willing to dump your cell phone? Let me ask a different way. How many of you are willing to dump your cell phone now that you know that there are inherent dangers and the risk of cancer and so forth? No one. Dr. Shealy, no one in multiple states. I'm talking about Indiana, Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina, Missouri, Alabama. No one is willing to dump their cell phone, even though they know there's a risk. And I would say, why? Why is it that you're not willing to dump your cell phone? And they say, well, it's convenient. It's convenient to have a cell phone. Absolutely it is. No question about it. But we're willing to die for it? Risk dying for it? Risk disease, getting cancers for a cell phone? Have we lost our minds? I think we have.
Yes.
Man, oh man. Well, loneliness and electronic gadgets. Dr. Shealy, do you think it's possible that our younger or young generations are more lonely than maybe we were, and that they need to be entertained? Because I've heard young people say, well, I don't want to do that because I would be bored. I don't ever remember saying I'm bored.
Right.
I don't ever remember, my parents saying to me, I'll tell you what, Vinny, why don't you do this so you don't get bored? It's never occurred. But I believe young people, more than we'd like to think, are using their electronic communications gadgets as a way of replacing interaction with others. And I think they might even have a fear of being bored. And this constant contact with other people lets them think that they have some kind of a social attachment to the world that they need to have constant reassurance of by looking down at their cell phone and communicating back and forth many, many times more often than you or I would when we were their age. Am I making any sense, Dr. Shealy?
Absolutely. Well, remember that this equal essentially to conscientiousness, which is organization and responsibility, is a network of friends. And a network of friends means people that you talk to, not people to whom you text. There's nothing friendly about texting.
Mm-hmm. Are you seeing in your practice, without being specific, of course, in general terms, are you seeing an increase in discussion about loneliness and about just not being part of a social network? Is that a concern of people with whom you interact?
It's not generally expressed in those terms. It comes out only when you look at their anxiety and depression scores, which we do check for.
So, is in your discussions, do you talk about these electronic devices, these cell phones, and
frequently?
Okay, can you describe
Especially
that kind of discussion?
When the phone rings in the middle of my conversation with them.
Yeah. Wow. So I can just see being in Dr. Howard Shane's dental chair with a cell phone.
Excuse me, get your hands out of my mouth so I can listen to my phone.
Dr. Shane, I got to take this call.
Right.
Jeez. So this happens in your office during consultation.
A 77-year-old woman. She apologized. She didn't take the call, but the phone did ring, and she looked at it.
Wow. Well, the constant contact is something that you had mentioned. That I think the words that you used is that you do not want to be on tap 24/7. I think that's a great way of describing it. Not being on tap at someone else's call. So, class, you can take yourself off being on tap, and I have, and it works really, really nicely. It's nice being in a vehicle traveling and not having to take phone calls while you're traveling. It's really nice. It's really nice being able to talk with your spouse. It's really nice being able to communicate with your friends without being interrupted. As a matter of fact, when our friends come over to our house, they know to leave their cell phones in their car. And it's really nice. It's 1950, it's 1960 right here at the farmhouse. Dr. Shealy, Alzheimer's, it keeps rearing its head in the news, and it is becoming, more discussed every day. What is Alzheimer's? What actually, do we know what causes it?
Nobody knows. The evidence is strong to me of several factors. To me, one of the most interesting studies took place, I think, over 30 years ago. It was looking, we'll talk about it after this.
Okay, Alzheimer's is coming up next with Dr. Shealy. What is it? What does it mean? What's the outlook? What's the prognosis? I've seen some of the effects of Alzheimer's, and they're absolutely devastating. Like forgetting how to chew. Literally. We'll be right back. Class, Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, medical doctor. NormShealy.com, NormShealy.com. We're talking about Alzheimer's disease, and I understand it's a neurodegenerative disease that starts slowly, gets worse over time, and it's pretty devastating to the family and of course to those afflicted. So do we know what it is, Dr. Shealy?
No, we can't say it's a single thing. The most interesting study was 30 years ago, and a group of nuns, and they looked at nuns who developed Alzheimer's disease, in their later years versus those who did not. And apparently, to enter the nunnery, these young girls have to write some kind of thesis, if you will. And they found that the ones who had a very poor, if you will, or limited expressive ability, in other words, sort of, they wrote simply, without any flourish, without any elaboration, were much more likely. So that suggests that a brain that's not hyper and normally active and curious, if you will, in early teens can have a negative effect. There's also evidence that people who use the brain, who study and read and explore with the brain, certainly have a lower frequency of Alzheimer's. Finally, there's really good evidence that a deficiency in vitamin B complex, vitamin C, some of the antioxidants also contributes to the likelihood of Alzheimer's. So I think it's a multifactorial thing.
Well, that's good news for our class, Dr. Shealy, because I think that we have some of the best and brightest on the planet in our class here, and I'm sure that we read more than the average. So I think that that's wonderful, and I'm sure we take supplements as well. So are you saying that we should make sure that we take vitamin C, vitamin B complex daily?
Yes. In my opinion, because of the increased toxicity in the air all around the world, from the 550,000 poisons that are released by industry every year, I believe that the intake of the basic B1, B2, B3, B6 is probably between 15 and 20 times as high as it was 60 years ago in order to protect you.
And I mentioned during hour number 1 that I saw this black dust on the fan blades at Maryland House on this air circulating fan. And I can tell you that we have I built a what would you call it? A central vacuum system for our house, and I ran the plumbing years ago. And when we empty the vacuum canister, the dust that it picks up is tan colored. It's the color of the road, the dirt that is, yeah, it's the color of the road dirt. And I believe the car is going up and down, the truck's going up and down, a third of a mile from our house, puts this dust airborne, it enters the house and so forth. And when we vacuum it up, that's the color of our dust. It's not black like brake lining material and diesel soot and so forth that is more prominent. And so I guess what I'm saying is, should we use an ionizer in our house that would ionize the air to cause these particles to fall down and form dust on the floors and other flat surfaces, rather than have it stay airborne longer and be more likely to be inhaled? We have one of those. Actually, we have 3 air ionizers.
Now, here is a place where I would get out my Gauss meter.
Okay.
And I don't know where the ionizer thing is, but I would walk through the house with my ionizer to see whether, I presume it might be on a lower level, a basement sort of thing.
Yeah, we have 2 of them in the basement.
I would walk especially over that area
with the Gauss
meter. How much radiation it's putting out.
That's a really good point. And hopefully, I can't do it right. Well, maybe I can. We got a break coming up. Maybe I can run around and check that out before we come back. Dr. Shealy's with us, normshealy.com. Dr. Shealy and I are talking about an air ionizer, and I mentioned that we have 3 of them in our home. And so I just ran down to the living room where we have one of these ionizers in the corner, and it's been sitting there for about 11 years. And it just has no moving parts, and it has it would look like steel wool, except it's brass, and the negative ions come flowing out of that brass wool, if you will. And I measured the magnetic radiation from it in the 0 to 3 range of the tri-field meter. It's a model 100XE. And what I found out was that the electromagnetic radiation from that air ionizer is about the same as I measured from a wall outlet that had no device plugged into it. So at this point, Dr. Shealy, I'm not very concerned about that. Are you?
That sounds excellent. I have to admit, my tri-field meter is one of my favorite gadgets.
Mm-hmm. And what I'll do is I'll post a link on the website to where you can get a tri-field meter. Mine is model 100XE, and we've had the CEO of the company that manufactures these on the air with us, and we'll see if we can do that again as well. So what happens, Dr. Shealy, is I've probably had this air ionizer for darn close to 30 years, the one that's in the living room. It just sits there. It uses very little electricity. There's no fan. It just pumps out ions, negative ions, and they attach to these dust particles, and they cause them to fall down. So, I kid Mrs. Finelli every once in a while, and I'll say, we need to get out that rake and do some dusting in our house because it causes the dust to fall down. And it makes our house probably look more dusty than houses that may not have one of these ionizers. So, Dr. Shealy, Washington, D.C. has the city council in Washington, D.C. voted to legalize 11-2 in favor of physician-assisted suicide. Now, they call this the Death with Dignity Act, and it allows doctors to prescribe lethal drugs. Patients must be mentally sound with less than 6 months to live. Now, how does somebody know that a person has less than 6 months to live? I don't know. Is that something a physician... Do physicians know exactly?
You're giving them godlike power that they do not have.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Number one. Number two, there is no circumstance under which I would consider prescribing such a drug. Mm-hmm. It's just not. It's not compatible with the Hippocratic oath. It's part of the Hippocratic oath.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And isn't this analogous to saying, listen, I'll tell you what, here's a revolver.
Go shoot yourself in the head. Be sure to aim properly.
Isn't that tantamount to doing that, Dr. Shealy?
Of course.
Okay.
It's quicker than the drug.
Yeah, could be. It says patients must be mentally sound with less than 6 months to live, and they must be able to feed themselves the life-ending medication. Feed themselves.
Well, what do you expect coming out of D.C.?
Yeah.
I would. San Francisco.
Unbelievable. And there's an image, I'll try to post this on the website as well, usaprepares.com. There's an image of it looks like a woman with younger hands holding a person that has, more aged skin, holding this person's hand. And it looks compassionate, but they're talking about killing someone. Literally, that's what they're talking about. And it's interesting how images can be used to make things that are pretty heinous appear to be okay. Gosh. So that's Washington, D.C. City Council members voted 11-2 in favor of physician-assisted suicide. Class, I just want to tell you that there's some upcoming events this weekend. A gun show, if you need to top off your supplies, get some ammo. By the way, I saw 22 long rifles for sale in Walmart in Virginia. They had 6 boxes. Can you imagine that? 6 boxes, $13 per box. Box of 333 Winchester brand long rifle 22 cartridges. They were gone within like a minute. The lady behind the counter said that they usually don't last one day. When they do get them, they're gone within a day. That day, the day they receive them. Little Rock, so arcade gun shows. Little Rock, Arkansas, Oklahoma City. That's November 5th and 6th. Little Rock, Arkansas, Oklahoma City, Somerset, Kentucky, Marietta, Georgia, Kingsport, Tennessee, and Lebanon, Missouri. That's November 5 and 6 for your shopping pleasure. And some people think that going to a gun show is like going to the pre-election gun, ammo, and accessory sale, because should Hillary become elected, many believe that the prices will skyrocket. So if you believe that Hillary may be selected as the CEO of corporate USA, you might want to top off your supplies.
Buy a cannon.
I know a guy who had a cannon, and he had a neighbor he didn't like, and so he used to make these projectiles out of soda cans. He'd fill them with concrete. It was a Civil War era cannon, and he would fire this cannon not exactly at his neighbor's direction, but near there, and just the sound of it would tame his neighbors into being more civil. Let's see. So we talked about physician-assisted suicide. I read a post about eating eggs, and it says eating one egg a day cuts the risk of strokes by 12%. Now, why would eating an egg not be a really good thing to do, Dr. Shealy?
Well, I've said that for the last 50 years, but I think 2 eggs is better than 1.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I tried to find out, and I couldn't find anything that related directly to 2 eggs versus 1. Mm-hmm. But it clearly says that 1 egg a day, eaten at breakfast, by the way. They also emphasized eating it to start the day. Mm-hmm. It reduces the risk of stroke by 12%. Mm-hmm. It also reduces the risk of heart attack.
Well, so as a great food, isn't an egg an almost complete food?
It is probably the single most complete food.
Okay, and I know that as people get older, their taste buds seem to change, but they will, generally speaking, eat scrambled eggs. And I've seen this in our family, and I've seen it, in my wife's family as we get older, we seem to depend more on eating eggs, and I guess it's a darn good thing. So is there anything wrong with eating a scrambled egg, Dr. Shealy?
Well, I'm glad you brought that one up, because there is some evidence that keeping the yolk from getting hard improves the lecithin and the cholesterol absorption. So, although I love scrambled eggs with almost anything else in them, if I'm eating just eggs especially, I choose to do it sunny side up or over minimum light, because I do like to get that runny yolk. But, hey, halitosis is better no breath at all. Eating the egg is what's important.
Okay. And then what about the oil? If a person, here's what I do, and please critique this. What I use is a small frying pan, cast iron, and I'll put some extra virgin olive oil, small amount in there, to have the egg not stick. And I'll scramble the egg, but I'll mix a small amount of milk in with the egg. Yeah, and I actually use powdered milk. I'll mix that with a little bit of Pro-Pure water. Mix that in a cup, for example, and then maybe like 3 tablespoons full, maybe 4 or 5. Add that to an egg or 2. Scramble that, and then when the pan is hot, the frying pan, which is a cast iron frying pan, fry the egg in, and with a stainless steel spoon, I will move the egg as it cooks so that it doesn't burn, and then I'll put that on a plate and I'll eat that. is that an acceptable way? I don't like them as runny as you might, but is that still acceptable? And I don't let them burn as well.
No, I agree. I think a great deal of what's there is the white protein is actually the protein that is the best for you. The egg yolk has, of course, essential fatty acids, some lutein and stuff like that also are excellent.
And they're quite inexpensive. I mean, ours are almost free because we have the chickens running around and they eat the insects and bugs and so forth.
That reminds me, my Araucana chickens, the ones that lay great green eggs, have stopped laying totally in the last month, and they're only a year and a half old. I've never had chickens wear out that early. How are yours doing?
Ours, we have some that are, I think, going on 4 years old.
Oh, you're kidding?
And no, I'm serious. And they're doing really well. We have Cinnamon Queen. They're kind of an orangey red. And when we come back, I'll tell you a little bit more about how we raise our chickens and what they do. We'll be right back. Dr. Norm Shealy is with us. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, normshealy.com, and you can go be with him tonight at the Doubletree Hotel in Springfield, Missouri. That's tonight at the Doubletree. Tonight is, let's see, November 2nd. November 2nd, tonight at the Doubletree, Springfield, Missouri. No charge. Dr. Shealy, chickens go through a period in the winter when egg production slows. Some cases it stops altogether. And the reduction in production is driven by a decrease in daylight and molting. And molting is the process by which chickens replace their feathers. And there's a biological process where resources are diverted from egg production to feather production. So they may lay fewer eggs or stop. I wanted to share that with you. And the type of chickens we have are Cinnamon Queen, and we have another type called Barred Rock. And the Barred Rock are black and white, and they're also called Barred Plymouth Rock chickens. They're called Plymouth Rock, and they're called Barred Rock. They weigh about almost 10 pounds. They are great for meat as well as eggs. They work really well, and they hunt bugs, which is really kind of wonderful. So that's our quick thumbnail sketch on chickens. Kyle in Montana, welcome. You're on with Dr. Norman Shealy.
Yeah, good morning, Vince. I was just going to tell Dr. Shealy what we do and might be able to help him out a little bit. When I wired my chicken coop, I put 2 sets of lights in. One set goes to a timer where I keep the light on. I wake them up at like 5 o'clock in the morning with daylight type bulbs. And then I turn it off at about 10 o'clock at night because the ducks require more light than the chickens. But anyway, so and then there's one with a switch where my wife, if she goes out there at, later I do, it turns on an outside light and extra light inside. The other thing that we do, now I use it's a hybrid type chicken. It's called a Red Ranger. They're a smaller chicken, but they lay large eggs, and they don't eat very much. So I'm trying to use it as efficient as I can. Oh, I'm sorry. They're called, my wife just corrected me. They're called a Red Sex Link, not a Red Ranger, but Red Sex Link.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other thing that I do is when the farmers around here are cutting their alfalfa, I wait till they get the third cutting so it's real leafy and doesn't have very many stems. And through the winter, I will, about every 3 or 4 days, I'll try to give them, the chickens, a little flake of hay each. I have 3 different coops. We have newer chickens, then older chickens, and then one for the ducks. And they will go after it like their life depends on it. So anyway, that's kind of what we have done. And we literally, the chickens don't last 4 or 5 years like Vince's, but personally, if they die a little early, that ain't going to bother me. I'd rather have egg production up there all winter long. And so ours usually last about 2.5 to 3 years is about all the laying life that we get out of them. But they have a good life while they go, and they lay pretty much winter all through the year. Vince is right. Mine will go through a little bit of a molt, but usually the egg production doesn't drop more than maybe 10 to 20% at the most.
Kyle, I've got a question for you. You talk about light being close to natural light. Do you use LED or do you use fluorescent or incandescent?
Well, I'm going to switch over to LED daylight ones, but I have fluorescent daylight ones in there right now. Okay. And that worked fine last year.
Do you think that the reason that your chickens may not last as long as ours is because of the temperature in the winter? Do you think that's what might be part of it?
Well, I'm sure that's
being
probably a good section of it, yeah, because we'll hit 20 below, at certain times. But we usually just leave them inside when that's the case, because they'll, chicken body temperature is like 106.
Mm-hmm. Do you make your own chicken coop, or do you use things like rooftop car carriers and things like that?
I made an insulated coop for them. Yeah, it has a R19 roof and a R13 walls.
Wow, Taj Mahal.
Yeah,
that's great. Kyle, thank you so much for being with us today, calling in.
Sure.
Kyle's a USA Preparedness Instructor. Dr. Norman Shealy's with us. Dr. Shealy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, thank both of you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.